recess. So we are going to start with orders of conditions. Oliver LLC, 165 Walden Road.
Sorry. In my rush to get everything ready for today, I just prepared everything that knowing was going to happen. But just trying to be prepared for trying to meet 6 o'clock. Which we got usually go to sleep today. So this was the one that we discussed very briefly tonight. It was for the installation of the upgrade of the septic system to a septic tank system within the Barrier Beach coastal treatment complex up there. So I only included the condition for the testing to the Board of Health and the O&M agreement to be put on file with the commission. So we usually do this.
No added conditions, pretty straightforward. Does anyone want to make a motion?
Issue as drafted.
Second? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
This is good. If I hand it to you first, sign it, and then do it.
Okay, Nantucket Conservation Foundation, the Dower Street.
It's the one that Karen presented tonight from the Conservation Foundation. This was the project that is the spot treatment of Phragmites as it appears within the currently restored area to treat the individual shoots and resprouts that keep popping up. So that's to just switch to a clip and drip method. So I kind of included our statements for that, but with that too, I tweaked it a little bit to include the 21 with a specific type of herbicide used to be reported to writing. And that gets accompanied with a copy of the license of the applicator. This 23, that all species shall be verified as being on the invasive list in the Nantucket Wetland Protection Regulations prior to any treatment, was there just in case one of the resprouts, to check the resprouts to make sure that our native Phragmites doesn't magically appear somehow. But that's just to be careful. And then there's 24 for the photos to keep it simple, but then also a report showing a list of the invasive species removed and which treatment method they used. So if they removed 20 stems of Phragmites, how did you do it? Or if something else, if a purple loosestrife or something showed up, they treat it and do it.
Okay, so that might be why the triclopyr is in there, because it's probably not effective on frag.
No. I think our concern, I remember when we looked at it last time, we also wanted to make sure that they had the ability to treat if other things that weren't expected that were invasive showed up within the area, that they could treat it quickly and not have to deal with it later. I doubt we'll see anything. I don't think do it. Or if we want to, you can simply remove the triclopyr.
Well, it can stay. They probably won't use it unless they'd just be wasting their time and money.
Yeah.
And when it says all species verified, does that mean like a picture's getting sent to you, or are they?
In this case, it's more of a check for them.
Like an in-house
In-house thing that they know for sure. I think given the fact that knowing that the applicator in this case is going to be Kelly Oman from the foundation.
Yeah, I think
she's the one I usually
pretty
send my
knowledgeable.
stumper questions to for IT and species. It's just more just to make sure, because I hate for people to get out there and all of a sudden just be seeing frag and kind of get lost in the world of treating it to have something else that sneaks in or something like that. So pay attention.
Yeah, I think that's good.
The pay attention position.
Move to issue. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? That one passes unanimously. Sites. 63 North Liberty Street,
Yep, we closed that one. That was the one tonight where we had some questions about the foundations and ground water levels from before that they changed to the crawl spaces to address that. I just wanted to memorialize in there that no materials are to be stored within the 50-foot setback, since it crosses onto the lot. Just wanted to make sure they weren't going to stockpile their stuff there. And then I also just wanted to memorialize that no permanent dewatering was permitted. Because occasionally you see that the temporary goes in, and then it just gets forgotten.
Never gets out.
So, it's more a reminder for me to double check to make sure that there's nothing missing.
Okay, does someone want to make a motion?
I'll move to issue.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Folsom, 9 Hollow Lane.
We didn't close that one. We continue that for some more information. Sometimes
Park
trying
Road,
to remember that.
Trust.
We did close the next two though.
Yeah.
Not in the rail.
Yeah.
Kept them all.
Parkmore Road. Yeah. Okay, Parkmore Road, Mountain Trust. Aqualandia. Rural Trust. 7278 Parkmore Road.
This was the sand rift fencing project. So included in here, we don't always do it. We haven't had it happen. We included to get permission from the beach manager to do the work on that beach, just in case there's plovers or something that come in, or oyster catchers, because they do nest down in the Pocomo Meadow area, just to make sure there's nothing there or something to do with that. And then, just for the monitoring report, the beach engineering profiles and site photographs, just to be done in the spring, and then the condition that kind of addresses what happens if we start to see negative impacts.
Can we add a condition, because this is one that you're nourishing a little bit, just to report however much goes up, down. They're nourishing,
Oh, how much nourishment?
yeah, just to report how
So
much
you would
actually,
say-
How much is applied?
yeah.
22.
Yeah, 22.
Sorry, I can't word things correctly
Yeah, yeah,
anymore.
Showing nourishment volumes. Shall be provided to the commission. We've been trying to include that condition on all these that have sand in this one.
It happens, Jeff.
Okay, so do we have a motion
Motion issues
Amended.
with the amended?
with the amendment.
Second. Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? That one passes unanimously.
But Michael sticking his head in the middle, should have brought out the fact we don't need sand.
Are we done?
Blackbird Park, Trust 17 Kimball Ave.
This was the one that was the construction of the full foundation underneath the road where Los Angeles presented the plan that was red and black to show those areas. Trying to think of couldn't think of any additional conditions off the top of my head, but so it would be open to anything.
The only one here that I mentioned was marking where the lawn hits the top of bank, so we don't keep mowing it further.
Sure. So 19. The ash strip.
So I'm confused on that. We want to know where the current edge of lawn is so it doesn't get expanded.
Right.
Because, I mean, if it hits the top of the bank, they're probably not going to go any further anyway, would they? I mean,
Right, I can't think of the map.
sort of
I used to work
memorialize
on that
those.
property, and I think that they like to expand their lawn as much as they can. So it's probably grown in the last 5 or 6 years, and we don't want it to grow more.
So to sort of memorialize where it is now after construction, it should stay where it is. So I think the idea.
Mm-hmm.
So the applicant shall mark the current
Correct. Wrong.
edge of loan
And do we-
slash top of bank.
yeah.
To permanently mark its permanent location.
Good. Anything else? Okay. Do we have a motion with the additional finding 19, marking of the current edge of lawn?
Motion to issue with amendment, including number 19.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
This is the last one here, Patrick, that's just the week.
Extension request. Oh, I'm sorry. We Realty Trust, 41 Almanac Pond Road.
Do you guys want to cover this real quickly?
Sure.
These always go fast to one.
So it's the first one I had requested too, I'm sorry, it was Joe told me to do it first.
41 always.
So 41 Almanac is the portion of the Norwood Farm Trust property that had been retained by the members of the family. And we received an order of conditions that allowed for brush cutting and sort of land management activities, as well as running the utilities down Almanac Pond Road and up into those properties. And so the brush cutting has been done, and there was notification provided to the commission as was required. But we are still trying to work with National Grid and ultimately Comcast and Verizon, and to get the finalized utility plans, easements. It's just quite slow going, and so we just want to extend the order to allow for getting those utilities, finished working out with them, which I don't know how much longer that'll take, and then to actually be able to do that installation, as well as to continue to sort of mow those two building envelopes or fields.
So how much extension are you asking for?
I've asked for the three 1-year extensions just because it seems that overall it's running utilities, I think 3,000 something feet by the time. I just don't know when they'll actually be able to do it. So and each time we get one of these, this seems like such a big project. You have to record it against the title, and so instead of coming in each time and on a project like this, I thought that it would be better to do just all three at once, given the scope of the project. I mean, I think that they hope that it would get done before then. And certainly the mowing, they did the new driveway, and that was approved so that you can sort of get and put it 2 posts and a chain. But that's on this one, and you'll see, I think on the other one, I only asked for 1 year because we're trying to. That's just a septic project. We think we finish up. This is an awfully big project.
Move to issue the 3 1-year extensions.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. That's granted.
Thank you. You want to sign that? Or just get going.
Okay, row 137 Walnut Road.
So this one is for a septic upgrade on one of the cottages north of the Wawanet Inn, not out on Great Point Road, but in that sort of grouping. And they've been working with another engineer. They retained me, and the permitting sort of fell flat. And we're working on finishing the permitting. I think you'll remember that you reissued this order at your last meeting, so I was able to get it recorded. And then we want to extend it just for the 1 year. They hope to, get the septic system put in. I think it was going to expire. Remember, I
It
forgot.
was gonna expire in December.
December. So the idea is we certainly can't get it done. I mean, none of the contractors will schedule work right now until after the new year. So I shouldn't say none of them. Everybody's very busy and that one's been trying. So anyway, our hope was to get the septic system put in this winter, and that's what we're trying to do. So we're just asked for a 1 year extension.
For those who remember, this is the project that before Art took it over, was the one that we continued the public hearing for nearly a year for them to research groundwater flow direction. That ended up coming back with the engineer saying, well, I don't know, so I'm gonna go back to my original design of the IA
It's
system.
an IA.
So,
Yep.
it was a year spent waiting to do
Now we need the year.
It's come full
Motion to issue a year extension.
Second. Second, all those in favor? Any
Aye.
opposed?
Thank you.
Liberty Realty Trust, 36 North Liberty Street.
Listed on the project that's been started at 36 Liberty Street, and I know I did an inspection out there that it's serviced. Sorry. And it was for the construction of an addition and a porch, and the installation of a bulkhead on the house. It's a local filing only. They have started the work for it, they just haven't completed the work for it. And it's getting ready to expire relatively shortly here. We issued this October 30th of 2013, so it's set to expire by the end of next month. They will not be complete by then. So they have requested as well to extend it for 1 year to October 30th, 2017.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Monitoring reports. Whitman, 87 Yale Point Road.
So these are the ones that we have carried over from, yeah, one second, Art. I carried over from last time because our last meeting ran till like 9 o'clock. So, Art had submitted monitoring reports for 93 and 99 Mill Point Road, and we've had some come in for 87. I was just gonna, Art, kind of go over some of the findings, and if you guys have any questions, you can.
So these are there's 3 properties. 2 are in one ownership under 93 and 99 are the CMDM LLC properties, and then 87 Yale Point Road is the 87. It's Lokeland is the trustee, Yale Point Road Realty Trust, and so they're separate projects, so they're adjacent. There's actually still a gap on that paper road, which is the piece of Tristram's Ave that's there, and so we've provided the reports. I've done the plans, as-built plans for both of the projects. Woods Hole Group had prepared the report for 93 and 99, and I had done a brief narrative for 87. And we've also, so on the plan, we've done separate plans for 93, 99, and then for 87, and then I did one plan for both that shows the bottom of the bank going 1,200 feet in each direction. So I also reported the volume of sand that that had been delivered over the past year for each of the projects, as well as detailed the linear footage of repaired sand-filled tubes, coir tubes, and then repaired fence panels. So we're kind of getting to where we needed to be, I think, on these, where it was very helpful that at least on one of the 2 projects has always been very much on their reports. The other one, I think the letter that you sent out was very helpful to catch them up a little bit, and so I'm working, in touch with the contractor that's doing the work, who can report to me, like I say, the panels, and then pass that information on to you. so that you know sort of what was replaced. And basically, one of the projects, 87, hadn't been maintained as diligently, I would say, as the other projects. So there was a little bit more repair that needed to be done there, but I think they're aware now with these monitoring that it has to be done really, every season. It's not something that can remain. And that was the one you may recall that had the wood wall that we had agreed as part of the enforcement order that we would take out the boards as they became exposed. And so that happened this past time. There was 2 top boards that we're actually able to cut out and remove. There's still some more that are down there, but they're buried and the water's not hitting them. And so in all of this, I had notified Jeff prior to the repair activity and trying to keep the lines of communication open. And this is sort of close the loop to let you know how much sand and the materials.
And this was after this last event? How did it fare?
No, not just
Yeah,
last
how did-
weekend.
how did it fare
No. This
last
was,
weekend?
I think I did the surveys in
Yeah.
June. And then I was waiting, I would probably I had one of the reports ready, and then, I was waiting to get the information from the contractor. And then was what was done. I gave them the plans and then they prepared it. But yeah, I think the date's on there. I don't have it right in front of me, but
969.
yeah, right. It was June that we did the surveys. Try to do it after the repairs and before the folks are there, sort of using their properties in our surveys and running around.
Any
I'm
other
heading out
questions?
there tomorrow to double check on
Yeah.
those as well as a couple other, I checked the harbor projects after this past storm and they were fine.
Okay.
A little bit of sand, but nothing of concern. And I'm gonna head out to these Oakland projects tomorrow.
And it sounds like you're treating knotweed on this site.
93 and 99 was getting treated right. There was some contaminated nourishment sand that had been provided, and they're working with Wilkinson Ecological for the treatment of and remediation of that knotweed.
Can I ask a quick question? Wasn't this one of the other projects too where they were dealing with the sea beach knotweed?
This was the project with the sea beach knotweed. I
I know.
haven't seen any,
Yeah.
and maybe that's again falls into Wilkinson's.
Yeah,
I
that
think
was-
that whatever their report said. I don't know that that's been a major.
No. Well, I know Ernie and I have both been curious because sea beach knotweed is notoriously mobile
Ephemeral.
and finicky, where one year it shows up in one spot and then another year it's 200 feet down the way. You never see it again back where you originally saw it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like it's there for a year, and then you never, it's an annual, so.
Yeah. I was just curious to see if it had come back.
I don't know. I was very interested in it that year. Learned a little bit about it. I haven't really
Sounds like it.
careful to look for.
It's a weird plant.
Since they have somebody as much of an expert as Wilkinson's folks on the plant stuff, I know when to say they've got people that know more than I do.
I'm just curious. Because I would have been surprised to see it there again.
I was surprised to see it there the first
Sounds
time,
like it's
up on the bank like
I
that.
mean, I
I've
know
never seen
you
it.
can go out to Eel Point and see it on occasion, but I've never found it in the same spot.
Yeah, I've seen it out at
More than
Smith's,
Yeah,
and I've seen it over at Tuckernuck.
yeah, because it's there, and then next year,
I saw it at the field station once.
yeah.
Do we know where the contaminated nourishment sand came from?
Yeah, it was from Olga's, but
Okay, so that everybody avoids that again.
well, I mean, again, I don't think it's a secret. It's and they made good on it. They've been part of the remediation effort, worked with the owner. And, I think they were taking landscape debris for a period of time in one part of the pit, and as you all know, it's
Going on, won't think much.
Yeah, look at the,
All right.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? It's just kind of nice to get regular monitoring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought people do follow through.
Most of the time. I think we're good.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Art.
Thank you, Art.
Okay, so, other business, approval of minutes. Any comment?
Thank you, Terry.
consent unless there's any other comments. Okay. Enforcement actions.
All right, I'll get to the main one last, that we have people here for. I'll just run through the other ones quickly that we have open, because we have we have 8 open right now, so it's kind of an all-time high for us. So 4 Swain Street, that was the one where they cut down the Phragmites without permission, and they just need to, they had open permit too. So we've spoken to them, and they have engaged, Paul Santos did the original permitting, to come back to amend their permit to include the treatment of that Phragmites area. And when they asked if I thought that that was satisfactory to kind of continue without getting fined or anything, I said yes. So I didn't want to speak to you guys, but it's for treating Phragmites. I was trying to foster them along just to get their permit in place so we could deal with the bigger problem through a proper permit and not try to stall it out or make it angry. Curatech, that was the one at 312 Pulpus Road. That's the corner of Pulpus and Quinnet Road. With the clearing of understory there, Mr. and Mrs. Curatech came into the office late last week to kind of go over what they had been doing, and I think they understand. It's the first time I've spoken to Mr. Curatech before. I think they understand what they can and cannot do, but I think there was still some confusion that's there. So I sent them back a letter just from the office, kind of memorializing our conversation, and then I asked them by the end of this week to send back a more formal response than their meeting. And they still have another, they're on for the next meeting to get stuff into us for what they're choosing to do. I also kind of pointed them in direction of a couple people to help them with a notice to deal with vegetation on their lot. And the good news for us, at least, is they have to come in front of us soon anyways, because they have to now permit a new septic system because their septic system is failed. So they'll be coming for that as well. So we're going to get a number of bites at the apple, but we should have it in front of us at the next meeting. But they understood why they got the enforcement, I guess is the nice way to put that. The other one that's still open, I know we closed the permit on it, but we kept it open for a little bit until they start the work. Holly Farm, I think, is pretty well set for a while with that. I just wanted to make sure, because we didn't take any definitive action at the end of the last meeting. Do you guys want to close that enforcement out, given that we've issued it in order? Or do you just want to leave it open until they've started their work this month and into next month? And it's pouring rain right now.
Oh, no.
Sunny though.
They said it was gonna do that this
My
morning.
windows are open.
So that's what I'm trying to put up. Is there any thoughts on that? Because we just left it kind of in limbo.
There's gonna be a rainbow.
I think we should leave it open.
I'd leave it open.
Okay, why don't we'll leave it open? I'll take it off the list for us to review then until a couple months from now, when they hopefully will have done the work to kind of move forward.
Yeah. Just a-
That's what they said too.
All right. Next one in line, I always say Rob Maurer, the folks on Smith's Point, and their litany of violations. I had a very nice meeting with Charlie, the homeowner there, and explained it was very interesting to see too, because it's always very interesting to me to find out how fast, when people think that they're in trouble, how fast they roll over on other people. So
That's a polite way of putting it.
I got a nice
Roll.
We had always attributed a number of the problems, what was going on, to what was on his property, and he provided some information to me that a number of the problems, like the excess roads and things that were originally put in, a number of them were put in by some renters on one of the other cottages, and he had approached the neighbor about it because he thought it was an issue and didn't get anywhere. instead of reporting it to the authorities, he was the one that got in trouble for it, so then he was very quick to say, I understand that that's wrong. So here's the contact information for these people. So, but he is very good. He also understood, he was under the impression that some of the things that he had done would have been, by his reading of the rules, considered maintenance. So replacing his beach stairs, he thought was maintenance, since it was doing that. And I explained to him that he made a substantive change and replaced that requires permitting and some of the other work. So he'll be in with the notice. He's hired Nantucket surveyors to do that work. They had done the previous work for him. But we're also going to try to meet on site there to go over all of them. But he sent me an email today with phone records of when he had tried to call the Nantucket surveyor's office to say, hey, I'm on this. Here's the proof that I've called. You know, going as fast as I can, but I would like to get this rectified before we close up the house in November to go back to Florida. So they're also moving forward. 36 Pocomo. I haven't spoken to Brian for a while, but Brian Madden was hired to do that. At last I spoke with him, he was in the process of getting all of the wetlands flagged and located and get put on a plan to quantify how much was cut in the buffer zone or resource areas. So some of the resource areas there include isolated land subject to flooding. They were in that mapping portion, and he said they're going as fast as they can. So they're making progress. Phil J. Realty Trust, 65, 67 Easton Street or 2 New Beach Street. That is scheduled for its first court appearance in another month or so. They've had to submit the record for that because they have sued us to get that removed. George Pucci thinks that that hearing will last about 5 minutes before the judge dismisses it because it's within a state and local resource area, regardless of whether you think the wetlands there or not. So you still would have had to have filed. So that's kind of where we are with that one, and that one's kind of stayed pending court action. So George has asked for us just to let it sit and let him try to get it through court, because one of his goals through court is going to try to get the judge to order an independent delineation of these areas to go to the Concom and that to be part of the acceptable result. So he wants to try to end it for all because he is also sick of dealing with that property. So that being said, the other one that we issued not so long ago as well, that we've received some information on, that we talked about their open public hearing tonight a little bit, and I know there's some abutters here that wanted to provide some comments as well, that we just got today, so I haven't had a chance to forward it to you. Brought to court, we issued that enforcement action that kind of encapsulated all of the activities that's there, and I guess before I took any action, given the fact that on the second, new information came from the applicant in this case, and the violator, I guess is the way to put it, came in, that I thought it was close enough to the meeting just to get to you guys to look at. The one thing I will caution us on is, for discussion purposes tonight, be sure that your comments and directions are related directly to the enforcement action, and that you don't get into an overwhelming substantive debate on the merits of the notice. I know that's a kind of a weird line, but we continued that public hearing. We don't want to have a public hearing outside of the public hearing for the hearing. It's a really bad way to put it. So if it's kind of parsed as part of the enforcement and update that's there, I think that's fine. But as soon as we start talking about, I would say, the merits of materials for the notice, that's better done with as part of the now re-noticed public hearing, which kind of confuses matters a little bit, but it does.
So
Yes.
the enforcement, just to make sure I'm correct, is for the original, like, house improvement move towards the
Yep.
wetland that was just never permitted.
Yep, so the enforcement actions, to go over really quickly, is for the construction of the fenced enclosure, which is the chicken area, the installation of the what looks to be some sort of dewatering well or dry well. The relocation of the dwelling and then the kind of associated work that goes with that. A lot of that is covered under the current notice of intent application that's in front of us, but some of the work occurred outside of that process while that process was going on. And I think we wanted to, as it had stalled out for such a long time, that when other work was done, issue the enforcement to not only try to drive them back in front of the commission to have the discussion on the project, but to try to move things forward. And if that results in a punitive action to kind of bridge that gap or however that works, so be it. But it was getting nowhere in front of the commission. Work was done, so this is kind of where we are. So Mark Rich from Site Design is the one that submitted this, so if you want to take his comment first and then the abutters' comments on the enforcement, but the fun part of your job is going to make sure that they stay within the realm of the enforcement.
Stay in the realm of enforcement, please.
Mark Ritz from Site Design, representing the, I guess, violator in this case, since the applicant is in another portion of the meeting. And would it be possible to go to the pub first, as earlier suggested? One thing I would like to just briefly clarify, Commissioner Erisman stated a few moments ago house improvement moved towards the resource area. It was actually away from the resource area. And I just want to reiterate some of the history as it has been conveyed to me. The work associated with the house relocation was actually performed by a previous owner. We got on board with this project looking to do some of the other work that we have open applications for currently. And in reviewing that work, we discovered that the house had been moved, modified, etc., and that there had been work done by a previous owner. So at the time, we actually voluntarily came in with a notice of intent, and after the fact notice of intent, to try to correct that situation for the house move work. That has gotten bogged down in the other notice of intent that we came in with simultaneously for the new work, but just I wanted to remind the Commission that that was something that the applicant had noted that we had come in for. It's now part of this enforcement order, but we had come in voluntarily to rectify that house move done by a previous owner. And also to that effect, there had not been any complaints. That work occurred sometime between 2012 and 2014-ish, as far as I understand. And there had not been any, as far as I know, complaints from abutters at that point about that work. That work I know had been ongoing for some time, because anybody who drove down, the house was up on cribbing for an extended period. So we had not, as far as I know, the Commission hadn't been contacted about that. No enforcement had been started on that previously. As far as new issues associated with the enforcement, there is a dry well that has been installed. I was told today that it has never been connected and is not currently operational. I have not verified that in any way, but that is what I have been told. And the chicken coop. So we are proposing, we have submitted a letter to you guys that we're not going to discuss any substance on, but we are proposing to come back the next meeting after proper public notice to address those issues, address the previous application. We're proposing to modify that application to include the two additional issues that have been brought up. One will likely be a removal, and the other issue we'd like to discuss with you, the fenced enclosure, will be relocation at least out of jurisdictional areas, if not off-site entirely. The other issue will be discussed further at that next meeting. That's pretty much what we have at this point. We just wanted to come in and respond to the enforcement action and try to get this thing moving forward. As far as the other open application, our intention is to continue that until after we deal with the enforcement issues and the first notice that dealt with some of those issues. So we just want to put that off until we can clear up everything that's in front of us with the enforcement issue right now.
So, before we continue and take any other comment, I guess the things that are not in compliance, like the coop or fence enclosure, whatever you want to call it, if you would like, you can, outside of the notice process, just say simply, yes, we are ordering that removed, and then it has to be removed. And then I would say at the next public hearing, if you ask, is it removed, or you could do a viewing as part of your next field viewing set to go back out to the site as a commission to verify that. That would be an appropriate action to take through the enforcement. So any of the unpermitted structures, obviously, the house is a little trickier. I wouldn't necessarily just order that removed. But like,
We could put it back closer to the wetland.
but the coop would certainly be something that would be easy. And I guess what we're looking for at the end of the day is to satisfy the board for the issues of enforcement. So it's kind of up to you guys for what path it goes. I would say if they're offering to remove it, that ordering it removed is probably not bad, which will be on site in another week and a half.
I mean,
We had asked them to remove the previous one. So
Right.
It seems a little ridiculous.
I'm
that they built another one.
concerned that
Yeah.
stuff has happened at this site.
No, it's pretty clear we didn't want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or the other option is you could always issue out, the $50 punitive penalty, order it removed, and then go from there. That's certainly an option as well.
I mean, the chicken coop was smaller, I'm pretty sure, on the first go
Yeah,
around
it's
when we
bigger
asked it
now.
removed,
So
and now
the
we
coop
have
has changed.
a structure.
It grew and then it shrank somewhat again, but it's bigger than the original thing that was there.
That may be my whole recommendation.
Right.
Say,
Still there.
say,
Yeah.
order it removed, issue the fine, and then you'll be out on site and set the date that it needs to be removed by the next field viewings in its entirety.
Out of our jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I'd be in favor of that.
A motion to order.
Well, before we make the motion to do that,
That's
we
what
might
we
want to
need
hear
to
the
do.
remainder of any other comments that are had in regards to the enforcement, and then we can do a motion to do all of
Whatever.
the actions that are necessary.
I'm curious about the well, how big is the, do we think?
I'm Daniel, I wasn't here for the beginning.
Question about the depth of the dry well.
No idea. No.
All right.
Try to find out, but
I'd be curious. I mean,
Well,
I have a big piece of equipment out there.
Maybe we should not hook that up, make sure it doesn't get put into use.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would hate to see the water being dumped right down to the groundwater, potentially contaminated.
Especially, that would be like a permanent dewatering of the structure, correct? If
Might be
they,
lift drainage.
if that
If
gets
that's what it's-
connected.
If that's what it would be connected to.
To.
Right.
So that,
Yeah, well, we're gonna,
yeah.
that'll be next. Get all these good answers.
I'm going to throw out there, I know that
Yeah.
a butter sent comments
Definitely
today,
been waiting
so.
patiently.
Maybe it's in through a lot.
Comments from the public on this?
I will say, as they come up as well,
Yeah, please.
Bruce Griffin submitted a letter to us today, and I think she'll be reading a portion of it.
Okay.
That kind of encapsulates some of it, and you guys will be getting that probably via email. We're looking for HDC? Select those, you can
We've all
see
been
that.
fired and we've taken over the position. It's great.
And we're in charge now.
Careful what you wish for, right?
Oh, no, it could be worse.
Okay, can you give us a name,
I
please?
am Jody Lewis, I'm owner of 40 Liberty, heretofore not been present. I have copies of this letter that was submitted today for everybody. I don't know if you want a hard
Yeah,
copy,
okay.
which I'd like to read from. I think before I start, I would like to comment that probably for the past 10 years, there have been complaints on the actions of this property by abutters. Because not only, there have been several previous owners that have been trying to do activity on this subject property, and they're having complaints and fights and whatever. So you know, it's been in contention for a long time. Secondly, did everybody get a copy of this?
Were these complaints made to the Concom?
I believe so, yes. Secondly, the chicken coop just received HDC approval, so my guess is that they have no intention of removing it. And
Start to find.
just this past week. And this is a question of my own, since I'm new to all this process. But if you've done work during an NOI process that's unpermitted, you do not seek permits for, and then try to add it to an NOI by amending the NOI, is that proper process when you're under an enforcement action? And so it's work that's not permitted and, you know, supposedly subject to fine, can you then add it to an NOI? Anyway, maybe it's a rhetorical question, it just seems a little funky to me.
Certainly not the recommended route.
Yeah. I would like to read this. I'll do it as quickly as possible. This is a response to the submission by Mark Ritz. This is response to the enforcement order and their amendments or corrections. Upon review of the enforcement order issued by the Commission to Edwin Snyder Realty Trust and a copy of the response to the enforcement from Site Design Engineering dated September 2nd concerning continued unpermitted development of Roxport, we would like to make the following comments. The SDE letter continues a pattern of minimizing and mischaracterizing the activity which has taken place on this property. In asserting that the house relocation and associated landscaping has resulted in less structure within the historically approved BVW buffer zone and has not resulted in any additional adverse impacts to the BVW or associated buffer zones, and that the total structural footprint within jurisdictional areas was reduced by approximately 31%. It appears that SDE is calculating structures to include house, an addition, and a deck, but not a retaining wall and the fill behind it. This filled area and other alterations of the property have displaced surface water and resulted in increased drainage problems on adjacent properties. Moreover, the reference, and actually we have a letter that Greg Elder submitted in June asking for remediation to the flooding that has now happened from the retaining wall and regrading of that property. I lost my point. This filled-in area and other alterations Moreover, the reference to a historically approved BVW buffer zone is also not correct. As we understand it, the land to the west of the property was delineated in connection with a conservation restriction or conveyance, and that delineation only looked at the property that was subject of that transaction and not the subject property. Edwin Snyder Realty Trust has inappropriately treated the wetland boundary as if it delineated the subject property. As has been demonstrated by prior submissions to the Conservation Commission, the subject property contains substantially more resource area than the Edwin Snyder Realty Trust has ever identified to the Commission. Regarding the structure which was installed on this property starting March 31st, 2016, and referred to as a small leaching pit infiltration device in the response letter, we would like to refer to the Commission back to the photographs of the activity provided with our letter of August 9th, which shows what appears to be a 25-foot tall drill rig and a small dump truck load of soil being hauled away. When the Natural Resource Coordinator was asked to take a look, he responded, "I was informed of some soil borings that were done to conduct deeper soil analysis. This information was misleading at best. We now have something installed underground in this property, which they have admitted is some pumping out of their basement. Again, and we've seen piping attached from their basement to this structure. Again, without a permit and no plan showing the design or location of what was installed. The closest neighbor now reports increased water coming into their basement, which is consistent with water being pumped out of the new crawl space and sent to an infiltration device. The enforcement order states that a restoration plan shall be filed with the issuing authority on or before 9/7. The SDE is not a plan. The letter is not a plan. It does not begin to address the restoration of the site beyond removal of the chicken coop, which, as we said, the HDC just approved its design. In order to assess the unpermitted work which has been done, Commission needs a detailed plan showing the full extent of the work before it can determine appropriate restoration. Enforcement order further states this shall serve as a warning that if the property has not been brought into compliance with progress made in open applications, the ticket shall be issued upon authorization of the commission. The property remains out of compliance due to unpermitted alterations which have not been restored. The property owner brazenly undertook alterations of the subject property, knowing from their submissions that the work was in the buffer zone, and knowing from our submissions that the work was in fact in resource area. Furthermore, there's been no significant progress made on the two NOI applications submitted in October of last year, and no new information on those applications since the enforcement order was issued. For these reasons, we believe it's appropriate to issue a ticket and begin to apply fines for the unpermitted activity. I don't know if you want to add. Thank you.
My name is Marcia Fader, and I'm the letter at 36 Liberty Street. And I have a copy of a letter that was submitted by Greg Elder, who's another abutter. This was submitted on June 20th, and Greg could not be here tonight, so I've been asked to read his letter, specifically because it relates to all of the violations that are cited as part of the enforcement order. The letter reads, I, Greg Elder, owner of 42 Liberty Street and abutter to 1 Brooks Court, and I will interject that 1 Brooks Court is now known as 2 Brooks Court. That has been corrected. So the historical and long-time 1 Brooks Court, which is at the very end of Brooks Court, is now been given back its long-time number, which is 1 Brooks Court. So just confuse everybody slightly. You should just know that 1 Brooks Court in the application is no longer 1 Brooks Court. It is now known as 2 Brooks Court, previously known as 44 Liberty Street. So I, Greg Elder, am formally submitting my request for remediation of unauthorized wetland disturbance by the owners of what is now 2 Brooks Court. The unauthorized wetlands alteration has caused and exacerbated drainage issues on my property. This submittal is above and beyond the wetland delineation of property at 2 Brooks Court, currently being reviewed by the Conservation Commission and contested by a neighborhood group since October 2015. Since the addition of fill after the move of the house at 2 Brooks Court and the subsequent installation of a retaining wall clearly above the grade of my property, and that is somewhere in the neighborhood of 1.5 feet or 2 feet above grade, water draining from the abutter's home makes any natural drainage of this property impossible and exacerbates an already serious condition. It is important to note that this move was done without the approval of the Concom. This wetland condition has been visually documented in pictures included with this submission that show the substantial ponding of the lower half of this property even days after precipitation. Since 1998, when the swampland forest abutting my property was clear cut and grassed over, there has been a gradual increase in water flow into my yard. This has been illustrated by the lack of percolation, a much higher water table, the inability to traverse the property, especially after precipitation, and the demise of existing vegetative growth in the southwest corner of the property. This issue has been discussed with and witnessed by Concom administrators, wetland scientists, town officials, and conservation groups. Especially noticeable has been the inability of any plant or tree to sustain growth in this area. Trees such as prominent maples, which once were the landmark of this entire area, have succumbed to anaerobic conditions and died. Privet hedge, which was used to delineate the property boundary by the previous and present owners at 2 Brooks Court, has either died or is in the process of dying. From the structural perspective, this high water sits for long periods of time against the foundation of the house and has been mentioned by local contractors as potentially damaging to the foundation. In addition, this condition is seriously impactful to the property values in this entire area. I understand the owners at 2 Brucks Court created a deck area by filling without proper authorization, and the conditions they have created on my property as a result must be remediated. I request that the current water situation be remedied by removal of unauthorized fill or an engineering solution that properly addresses the changed drainage conditions. The current water situation is not tolerable. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you for your time and assistance with this very important issue. Sincerely, Greg Elder, 42 Liberty. Thank you.
I'm just curious, how far is the abutter house to, what's the separation of the two houses? From Brocksport and,
I would say, I'm not sure, but that is also an excellent question to ask. It's part of the public hearing. The house. This is that kind of tricky space.
gotcha. Okay,
We can provide that in 2 weeks.
I appreciate it, yeah. Thanks.
So I'd like to see a plan that shows the extent of the fill and, you know, what the pre-existing conditions were, and then where's the retaining wall, how much fill is placed there? Where is it in relation to the wetland boundaries and stuff like that?
I will say too, just for the record, not related to the enforcement or the public hearings, that if there are questions on the wetland delineations for any of those lots that are in that area, anyone is eligible to file a request for determination with the proper information on some of those areas to demonstrate where those wetland lines are. You just have to provide notice to the property owner. So if wetlands are off-site, or if people believe that wetlands are running off of the site or bigger than what it is that comes onto their property, that they're always eligible to file their own request to delineate those. So I don't want people to think we don't have an action to say, we've been waiting for those answers for a long time. You may be able to get those answers through the commission yourself. That is a tool that is available. That's an important part of that tool, is that you can file some of those on your own. It doesn't give you the right to access someone else's private property, but it does to deal with some of the things on your own. So, or if it's something that crosses onto your property, to deal with your property individually too. So that does provide some help to people looking for answers for some of these things. So that's my administrative part for the question. They're handy.
Yeah, well, I would like to see a wetland determination by a third party on this one. Separate from those involved. Just,
Well, who files for that?
Well, that's the problem. The commission's not going to file to the commission.
Yeah.
So
Right. It's kind of what we need, though.
yeah.
Yeah, we really do.
We do for the NOI,
Oh, wow.
but to determine whether fines start for some of these enforcements.
Yeah, I think that's
well, I think tonight we're dealing with the enforcement. Independent of delineation, we know there are clear violations and remedies that can happen to some of them. Those are the actions we'd be looking to do. I think dealing with the delineation is something that would be a part of the project, because that's independent of. We know the chicken coop is in violation.
right. And I think sounds like we substantially know that the well is in violation, no?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think those two things have to go.
Yes.
Should we remove the well or just prohibit any further infiltration?
Well, some of the times the questions that I've been thinking about with some of these are, would that typically be something that would be a permissible activity given the resource areas and buffer
Right.
zones involved?
Maybe if we knew what it is. We don't know what it is. There's been no engineering on it. There's been
Right, and if
no
it's
filing.
to
and
remedy
notice.
something that was caused by a previous enforceable action, it's a problem. Like if it's remedying water in the crawl space or basement of the house that wasn't permitted to be the way it is, you know, it really shouldn't be there.
Yeah, if they're pumping it out of the house, if they're doing dewatering effectively, then we
Right.
should put a stop to that.
Well, can we request the applicant to get a wetland delineation?
Well, that would be part of the notice.
Mhm.
I would say in this case, we're dealing with the specific things that were mentioned. So actions in this case wouldn't necessarily be to delineate the wetlands, since that's part of the other process, but it would be more to say chicken coop needs to be removed, the well needs to be decommissioned.
Yeah.
That those would be the more appropriate actions to,
For this particular.
for this
For
particular.
ground, I think we should do those two at a minimum.
Yeah, and then bring it up in the next,
I think that putting the chicken coop in there after we said in October of 2015 that the smaller one needed to be removed, you couldn't be more blatantly saying, we do not want to follow your rules. I mean,
I agree.
yeah.
Well,
And we could decommission the well, but not necessarily, if it's gonna come back in the next application or in the next meeting, and they apply for the well, once we understand resource areas.
They certainly can. I mean, I guess you could still issue out some sort of action or penalty if you wished to for it. But you could, you know, at least at a minimum, require some sort of certification that it's not working. or
Right.
not in place. I mean, it's not a well in the sense they're not drawing water.
No,
It's
exactly.
more of a leaching pit.
Right,
So you have to somehow verify that it wasn't
continuously.
being discharged into.
Yeah,
Mm.
that might be hard.
I mean, I guess the comparative example, and I apologize to everyone for bringing this up, would be something similar to when, like, the Bluff installed their dewatering pipe that was connected, and when we put it under enforcement to cap it off for the time being, they exposed where the pipe turned, they exposed the connection
Yeah.
of them coming together, and that the T-joint that would be there for it to work was missing, and there were end caps on the three pipes. Not saying that that's what you need in this case, but
But you gotta be able to visibly see it.
you have to be able to see it
To see it.
Mhm.
at any time.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say, you see it, you get the picture of it, and then you walk away, and, you know,
And it's not capped.
5 minutes later,
I know.
someone's unscrewing the cap and putting it back together.
Is the pipe coming out of the house visible, where the pipe leaves the house? It's sort of been implied that,
It was, it's in the photograph.
well, if it's coming out of the house, they could have a cap there, they could cut it right there and
Yeah.
cap it.
Yeah, it says water is pumped via a sump pump to the top of this leaching chamber where it infiltrates back in. So water is
It would
actively
prob- It would want to be
being
a fire.
pumped.
Mhm.
All right, so cap it.
I'd be up for
Decommission
capping and
it.
disconnecting.
Chairman.
Yeah.
Can I just make a comment? I don't know what the process is, whether I'm allowed to butt in or not.
No, comments.
Mr. Ritz has already said that it was not functioning now, but I can tell you that neighbor has more water in their basement than they've ever had. So something is diverted drainage. So if it's not functioning now, something's going on.
Just a quick question through you, Mr. Chairman. Which neighbor we're talking about, just so we know.
Nichols.
Nichols.
At One Brocksport, the now One Brocksport.
Okay.
I was told that it is not currently pumping, but again, as I mentioned, that we have not been out to, you know, start digging around and independently verify. I'm just conveying what's been passed on to me. We can certainly, if it's the commission's pleasure, we can certainly cap it and make sure that there's nothing going on now.
I think we're better to cap it and have someone from our office go
Mhm.
inspect that it is and verify that it's capped. And that it, in the area that it is capped off in, is left exposed until it's
Right.
permitted or its removal is decided as the complete course of action.
Was it on the previous site plans? I don't remember seeing it.
It's,
No.
No.
Right.
And I'll just say that this property owner has pushed, I just don't have any degree of trust left that they're doing what they say. I
Yeah.
mean, there's no reason we should trust them without, we need to have visual. And this is not a reflection on you at all, Mark, or anybody else on the property except for the owners.
What's your feelings about the well?
Well, at this point, I'm more concerned about what's going into the well.
Yeah.
But I think that, again, is something that we need to have a very close look at once the process comes in.
Well, the advantage is if they apply for the well, then we will ask for wetland delineation. And I think we need.
We've already asked for the wetland
Right.
delineation, so that's part of the base submittal requirements.
And part of the thing is, if they needed to install the well to deal with water issues that they created with by filling in front of the house, then we should remedy
Right.
the patio that's been filled over, permitting the well.
That would be,
So,
Well, I guess part of the question is too, and it's something we don't have in front of us tonight, unfortunately, is when the house moved, is part of the area that's left, that's been filled, was that previously open or occupied by structure? And I think that's
Surveys.
something as far as the enforcement at least goes, looking at how that shift occurred and what the footprint was and what left. Because to me, an area that would have been lawn and filled is very different than an area that was crawl space and house
Yeah.
that was turned into an area that's retained and filled. Because looking at the regulations and how those permissions work, and given the age of the structure, how any of the previously permitted or grandfathered uses may work, that may be an important distinction to make in a decision.
We can provide, again, for the next
Pre
meeting,
and
we can
post.
provide
Yeah.
pre and post footprints. Those were actually on the original plan. We
Right.
can do a little more detail work. And if I may speak to the wetland issue briefly, we have a situation, again, this is gonna come up obviously in the notice portion, but we have a situation where we have differing experts with differing opinions.
Yeah.
It's not that we haven't submitted recommendations, it's just that one side has a different view
Yeah,
of
we
what's
said
what. So, I'm not a wetland scientist.
Right. That was sort of what I was thinking of the third-party concept.
Well,
But then again, as you.
We'll get into that.
We can get it, yeah, that we can
Okay.
address in 2 weeks as well.
That delineation is an imperative to the enforcement action.
we also have review by Bruce Perry,
Yeah.
things like that, so.
So we'll get into the delineation as part of the public hearing.
So for the purposes of tonight's meeting, where are we at?
Yeah, we need to decide what action we're
Yeah,
going to take.
what action we can take?
I think that some fines should be put down.
I wouldn't be opposed to a fine in this case too, especially
I agree.
on,
At this point, where they've done what they want.
they basically had a warning and they,
And if we went through the process to possibly permit this chicken coop through HGC, knowing that it should not be there,
Then we've already asked for it.
yeah, it's just very blatant.
All right, so keep in mind, the maximum penalty we can issue is $50 per clear witnessed violation. So I will attest to the record that I have witnessed that violation. So we know it's in place, but that's the set penalty. You guys just have to authorize the issuance of that penalty for that specific violation. If you want to do another one to go further, we have to do that one specifically too. So.
Do we want a violation for the well?
yes.
Yeah, it's not permanent. It's not
Obviously,
approved, wasn't-
they know they're being.
I've witnessed the well as
Permits
well.
out.
So,
They know the process, obviously.
but that's by the town bylaw, because we do not have set penalties with the commission, as we talked about last time. The maximum penalty that we are allowed to impose is the town bylaw penalty of $50 per witnessed violation. So, that's kind of where we're at, so.
Well, I think that's good, even if it's not huge money, at least it's a statement
Yeah.
of, maybe it'll make it a little bit clearer to them that this is serious.
Yeah. I'm surprised the house sold, given how hard it is to get everything cleared up and paperwork and everything.
Yeah,
That's the
right.
problem, is it wasn't hard to clear up.
There was nothing there.
There are
No banks must have been involved.
Yeah, it is what it is. So,
Okay,
you do need to make a motion.
so, yeah.
With the action and then the other action. So if you want them removed, then you want the penalty, you need to issue that, or how you just want that to be, but you need to have a motion and a vote.
For each two. How about, we have
I
a
would
motion?
prefer it to be for each one separately,
Yeah.
it's very clear.
So
So
do we
how
have a
about
motion?
a motion to remove the chicken structure, whatever that's called, the chicken enclosure, from commission jurisdiction, and to impose a $50 fine for constructing the coop without a permit, or whatever that would be.
That's
Okay.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously.
all right.
For the second one, for the well.
Now, I'd like to make a motion that the pipe leading into the drainage pit be capped in a place that is visible to an observer.
I would say an observer at, within reasonable hours, so.
Yeah, within reasonable
I'm not
hours.
gonna go out there at 4 AM with the flashlight out, but it needs to be exposed for inspection.
And that we impose a $50 fine for the construction of that pit within our jurisdiction without a permit.
Do we have a
Second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes
Good job.
So,
Remarkable.
the other two components, I guess the question is, do you want to wait for the public hearing to deal with the house and the porch area? I mean, I don't want to sound good by saying they're not moving anytime.
Yeah.
No,
So,
Right, about the same.
we
You're
should
not
see,
for-
we
you're
should
not
see
forfeiting,
the
right?
footprints.
You've established the date of the enforcement order, and you've established the date of notices that fines or punitive action is pending. So, that's firmly established, so you're not really using anything other than time. But that's your guys' discretion, but if we're gonna take action on the two items, I would say at least taking an action to, hold those two things open pending the upcoming public hearing would be, at least action on those items tonight. So they're just not in limbo.
And can we set a date that we have to hear it by 10/19? You know, if it
Well, I'd
keeps
say-
continuing.
It's 20 minutes.
Do you remember, did we renotice that hearing for the,
I believe that we had originally, prior to the enforcement, I believe that was the date we had requested a continuance to. But with the enforcement, I believe all of the discussions that at least Jeff and I have had have been to renotice and hear it on the 21st. I'm not sure what Joe did in terms of.
because I think the problem is, or we could make the motion to the,
Well, it says 10/19.
to the next properly noticed public hearing. So if we mismarked it on this, but we run the notice and provide notice to the abutters of the date being the 21st.
Well, that's the next meeting, isn't it?
So,
Next meeting. This is now the 21st.
So, what you're saying is we basically need to make a motion to hold over these other two enforcement actions.
well, I think it'd be good, since you've taken very definitive action on the first components, to at least take action to deal with the other two, even if it's to hold them to the public hearing of the notice of intent. But you're not giving up the right to do anything, but you're moving it forward. I don't want to get lumped in that you took action on the two and just ignored the other ones.
Yeah.
I think
I mean-
in a way
No,
that it's moving forward, so.
but to a specific date is now the.
No, I would say for this to say you're pending it being heard as part of the notice of intent. We've noticed the notice, we have re-noticed the notice of intent hearing for the 21st of September. On the house specifically, the other notice for the other features that are of the second notice were the ones that were continued to the 19th of October. it's just a pain that there are two notices, because that's,
Yeah.
the one is just related to the house, is the after the fact, and the other one was noticed for the new work, which at the time was the proposed, secondary dwelling on the vacant piece, and some other site work. There was a pool that was proposed and some other things. That is the second notice that's there, so.
So-
That's clear as mud.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say this. I almost think that they should be fined for each one of those too.
Now's the value.
Just because it's been so long with no information, there've been more violations piled on top that we issue the.
Well,
I would say yes, but they inherited that.
yeah, I guess
Yeah,
I would
That's
just,
Phil.
That's the.
I would be careful issuing the punitive penalty on inherited issues.
Exactly. That would be my concern.
So, but I would definitely not forfeit the right to do it.
So moving it along leaves that open.
So we need to, or just, we're trying to keep this enforcement action open.
Right, it is,
Essentially.
somebody needs to make a motion to say we'll keep the remaining opens item.
I'm gonna make a motion to keep the remaining items open, subject to review for, an enforcement action at the next meeting, which is gonna be September 21st.
Perfect.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes.
That's it for enforcement.
Thank you.
I'm glad you could word that. That
Because
Fun.
wasn't coming out of my mouth.
So much for 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
Always something.
Yeah, good, kind of confusion. Okay, report, CPC.
He's down.
Upstairs. NPDC, well, that's supposed to be
Yeah,
downstairs
like I
too,
heard he
so
skipped his meeting.
other than that, nothing from them. Mosquito control,
We haven't had a meeting since our last meeting.
any other reports?
I'm good.
Very good. Commissioner comment? No? I want to make one kind of cool comment. I was on a job last week, and the owner, pretty nice little house with some heavy-duty landscaping, was trying to convince the landscaper to juice up some of his plants for next season, planning for next season. And the landscaper, who I will mention was South American, said that he had restrictions and he could not do it. He actually told the homeowner that the town had regulations on fertilizer and that it would have been in violation. He didn't want to do it. And he didn't know who I was. And I thought that was pretty cool.
Get out and shake his hand and say, thank you.
I was about to say, where's this truck? I want to see who this guy is. Yeah, this guy was just like,
Phil, you were just
I was
third
putting-
party, just hanging out there, and you.
I was,
heard this
well, I had
and-
my setup outside and he was walking around the property with his
Yeah,
landscaper.
nice. That's good.
He was talking about for your band, yeah. I mean, the place looked fantastic. It didn't really need anything more about it.
Just get a minute, this is not a lot of fun topic.
It was,
What fertilizer?
it was pretty cool. I had that.
Those are always nice to hear.
Yeah.
You know, and then we do need a motion to adjourn.
Okay. Do a motion to adjourn?
Motion adjourned, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.